Hey, friends. My name is Unica Walcott. I am the host of Career Conversations. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Today's guest is special. Today, I have Marla Majors on the show. She is a chemical dependency counselor and mental health therapist. She's also a former schoolmate. So she'll jump right in. We'll talk a little bit about her experience and how she got here. And maybe you can gain some tips on how you might be able to uh, be like Marla when you grow up. So welcome Marla Majors to the show.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's
Good.
Friday. So yeah.
Yes, thank goodness. Oh, countdown is on. And so I'm glad that you were able to join me for this week's episode. I want to just kind of jump right in. So, like, what does your family think you do when you tell them that you are a mental health therapist and chemical dependency counselor?
Oh my gosh. They think that I'm nuts. No, I'm kidding. They think that I work with people who are having struggles with life transitions,
Mhm.
um, particularly with young adults. Young adults, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's who they think you work with. So, what do you actually do in comparison to what your family thinks?
Everybody.
She said I work with everybody.
Yes. So right now, I work with adults, children, teenagers, adolescents, um, people who could probably be my parents, honestly. I work with a very wide range of people. And right now, I'm working specifically with vets and their families.
Oh, cool. So, did you always want to be like a mental health therapist when you grew up, or what? How did you get here?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I've always found myself in the helping capacity of people. I remember trying to like console my friends when they're having a hard time. I've also learned about how I always want to be like an extra ear for people, helping them troubleshoot their problems, and it kind of is a little it's like kind of natural for me in a way to kind of be in that position. And now as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, this is me. I can totally do this. I really enjoy it. I really do enjoy it a lot. I do.
That's good. So, what was the most difficult part about becoming a mental health therapist? Like,
Man, it's like a little bit, but a lot of it. And
okay,
really, the little bit part of it is just um, being mindful of how I present questions and information to people,
okay,
and hoping that they hear me. The hard part about it was not really understanding, I guess, like their trauma in a way and how it impacted them on a really deep level. And then the
Mhm.
other part of it too is really working on my own stuff. And so sometimes I'm literally in session with people and I am having a kind of transference situation. Like they're talking about something that they went through that I thought I had processed and clearly I didn't. And I'm
Okay.
sitting there with the client trying to be present with them, but struggling with something that got triggered up in me. And that was really hard for a while, and I realized that I have to do my work, like even harder than I thought I did before, but now I really have to do my work.
And so, when you say your work, you're saying that you have like a therapist for yourself, or what do you? How do you manage that for yourself?
Yeah, so both. So I do have a therapist for myself. One of I actually got a therapist when I struggled with postpartum with my oldest. And
Yeah.
that was something that really wasn't really talked about, like I felt when I was growing up. And so as an adult, struggling with these feelings and feeling bad about these feelings, and then looking at my baby and then feeling guilty, and it's having these gyrations really going on the inside of me. And I'm like, I need to talk to somebody. And I think the breaking point was for my husband really, was when I dropped some beans on the floor and I got so mad at the floor. And he was like, Marla, just go take a sit. I'll clean this up and call your therapist back. Because literally she had called me and I was like, I'm not calling her back. I'm a therapist seeing a therapist. That's crazy. Who does that? I
Yeah.
literally was so hard on myself about it. And I see her still. And my oldest is 6. And I need to check in. every once in a while. I'm
Oh,
not
that's
as,
good.
yeah, it really is.
In my experience seeing therapists, like that was one of the things I learned was that, therapists need therapists too. Like, I mean, you're not, suddenly superhuman because you have a particular profession. You
Mhm.
still have things you need to work through for yourself. So I'm glad that you were like brave enough to like take that step and like get the support you needed because it's scary.
It felt scary. Even when I was in the chair in her office, I was still trying to rationalize why I shouldn't be there, even though I had every reason to be there.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And get
totally.
like the help you need. Like I feel like sometimes it's really just hard to ask for help regardless of what kind it is. We're always supposed to be like the strong person and figure it out and carry everything. And you can't do that forever.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Really couldn't. And I didn't understand why I was feeling that way, but I felt like I could be superhuman. I can take care of everyone else's problems and my problems too. That's all I had to say about that. So,
Just look, you can't. I can relate as somebody who likes to try to be a fixer and like overdo it. So you talked about really kind of the difficult parts of being a therapist, and what do you love most about it?
oh my gosh, like, there's really not a part. Okay, the part that I struggle with is the paperwork. I'm like, do I really have to do this? I guess if I want to, yeah. But the other part of it is that I really enjoy just working with people and learning about them, and because I'm not the expert on them, I get them maybe 4 hours a month, maybe, if they're consistent or if our schedules match up. Sorry, my eyeball is just still watering, but we're gonna hang in there today.
Okay.
But
Little allergies.
yeah, allergies and mascara, but but yeah, and so yeah, it's really like going now. But yeah, but anyway, I really like every aspect of it. I really enjoy talking with people. I really enjoy learning about them. I really enjoy just realizing, like seeing the changes that they make, you know, and
Yeah.
to know that I had made it, I helped them make that difference. At one point, I was trying to own people's progress because I thought that if they did something well, it's because I said something to
Huh.
make them better. But the reality of it is that as a therapist, we don't really make suggestions. We help people guide their decisions in a sense. And really, it's called like the Socratic method. And that's a little more, I'm not saying basic or anything, because it really is pretty complicated when you really think about it, because it really gets people to really challenge their thoughts in a way. Because sometimes, like in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a thing called cognitive distortions. And whatever lens, and I like to do this, lens that we have is how we view the world. So if
Yes.
we're in a traumatic environment, we're viewing things in relationships with these lenses, and we're making decisions in those. And when we're
Yes.
and then when we are struggling with drug addiction, trauma, sexual addiction, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, that kind of just comes up. And now you might say good morning, and some people might be like, why she say good morning? You're like, dang, I just say good morning. That's all,
Like, I'm just greeting you to say hello, and somehow that triggered you and took you to a place that you didn't want to be.
Yeah, it could be little things like that. Or, I had a client the other day, pretty much told me that they were debriefing with a friend, and because of how they interpret something I said, their and their friends are now talking about it, but they're not in the session getting the whole context out of it. And so
Ah,
whatever lens that person has and they're communicating with their friend, it really creates it disrupts the therapeutic process or the therapeutic relationship, because people can imply things that aren't there going on, especially if they're not there. But the hard part about it too is people, you have to respect people's decisions, if
yes.
they decide to talk with somebody or not, and which is totally okay. But I'm always tell people, be mindful of the people you talk to, be mindful of your sources of information. um, if somebody's bitter about their life, don't ask them about how to be positive. It's kind of a, you
Yeah,
know
it's probably not a good source for that kind of information.
right, yeah, definitely,
Same
definitely.
way when you're doing academic papers or preparing news or other things, you really want to be mindful of your sources. I mean, if you want a particular viewpoint, then you know where to go for a place because it's going to align. So I get what you're saying. It's really important to be mindful of your sources and how you navigate relationships.
Yeah.
As far as what you love about therapy, we've talked a little bit about how you're able to make transformations for people, kind of like through the Socratic method or like asking questions and kind of pushing. What has Do you have like a favorite question you ask, or is there something that has like been like a really good like pinpoint you've used regularly with people?
Oh yeah, like one of them is, what are your thoughts about therapy? Because that really helps me build
Ah,
around the relationship. Because girl, there's a lot of people out there that either had one appointment ish, and why I say ish is because they went to intake and that was it. They didn't even get to the therapy piece of things,
yeah,
you
because the
know.
intake is literally just like, hey, what's your name? How many family members do you have? Where are
Yep,
you from? Like, so that they can have a context for where you're coming from when you share certain things,
yep,
or know to ask more questions.
yep, yep,
So
absolutely.
yeah, but I can see why like therapy is not a good point. Like, I mean, for some people, it's a really stressful thing.
Mhm,
I
yep,
mean, culturally speaking, my family until recent years is like therapy. Like, and us are crazy people. We go to church and we pray. We don't go to therapy. Therapy is for people that are few screws loose and on their way to the crazy house. And it's like no, therapy is it's for everybody. Frankly, for lack of better words, I mean, there's always something you can work on or be better at. It's not necessarily saying that you're broken and need fixing.
yep.
And I think that that's something that people don't talk about enough. I know for me, like I battle with depression myself, and having to get therapy has been a helpful tool for me. I mean, honestly, I don't think I'd be married if it wasn't for like couples counseling. So there's so many different things. Like it's not just for like when things are bad. It's like, well, if I want to prepare for something important for my life, like if you wanted to take your SAT so you could go to college, you study for that. Why wouldn't you prepare for marriage or get help when you're taking on a new role at a company? It just all or becoming a parent, which is one of your specializations. You offer parenting coaching. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I am certified in 3 levels of triple P. So, and you have to have like a whole training. It's really expensive, you know. It's called an evidence-based program. So an evidence-based program is one backed up with science that they can prove that over time this works, whatever this is, you know.
Okay.
Similarly to cognitive behavioral therapy because it's most widely used and it can be used in different situations and be successful and work well.
And for
Um,
people who are not familiar with the term cognitive behavioral therapy, can you kind of give like a quick explanation?
Yes. So cognitive behavioral therapy is how your thoughts influence your feelings and how your feelings influence your actions. And
Okay.
so a lot of people will say, well, I don't know why I did something. I'm like, yes, you did. I can show you why. And so now as we're talking about it, they're like, oh, okay. I can see how watching that movie triggered a feeling in me where triggered me to go on this website to talk to these people, for example, you know,
Okay.
and or why it triggered me to now want to go back and smoke, you know, or go back on the drug of choice because they had a hard time dealing with that trigger for them. That triggered a emotional response to some trauma they had as a child, something that happened the day before yesterday, you know, all kinds of things. And so, but yeah, so when it comes to parenting, a lot of that encompasses understanding how our thoughts influence our feelings and our feelings influence our actions really does come into parenting. Because of how we parent, we generally parent how we were parented.
Yeah.
And when we are parented in a way that's not where the intentions were well, but the impact of it is something else. Now we have kids that are acting like, looking like, smelling like, thinking like, and we have all these questions like, why is our kid like this when I can tell you why, you know?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to Triple P, which is a positive parenting program, and it hails from the continent of Australia, not country. But anyway, it works because it helps parent in a positive way. So a lot of that means spending just quality time with their child, um,
Mhm.
phrasing how they do like timeouts or redirection from a child running through the house. Instead of saying something like, don't run in the house, walk in the house, because it's implied when you walk in the house. Because if you say don't run, it means, not, it means to walk, but when you tell them to walk, when you tell them walk in the house, it tells the child what they need to be doing rather than what they don't need to be doing. Because
Right.
if you don't run in the house, can I skip? Can I do parkour? Can I do gymnastics? Your
Yeah.
parents.
Can I flip off the sofa?
And so, but it's hard because when you parented for a long time or you have sets of children, it can be kind of hard because I've worked with families that have teenagers and they parented them this type of way and they kind of turn out okay from what the parents are saying. And then you have a younger child, like about 2 or 3 years old. And now the way that you used to parent is not working anymore with the younger child. And so now the parent kind of has to upgrade, in a sense, their parenting strategies. Now, I have worked with a lot of parents that actually have some really great skills, but a lot of it is just kind of tweaking them and redeveloping those skills so that the parent can kind of keep up with the child consistently.
Mhm.
When we're tired, when we're hungry, we don't feel loved, we feel, in dealing with our own like mental health, we have a hard time, being consistent. Even with
Mhm.
their own diets, like, oh, I'm going to work out, I'm eating healthy. But if you have a bad day, you might start off with a donut at lunch, maybe at breakfast, to now we're having fast food at lunch and at
Oh,
dinner.
look, when I'm having a really bad day, I'm eating chicken nuggets and French fries. Like
Ooh,
I turn into like my 3-year-old self, and that's what happens. And so, like when I realized that, I was like, I can catch myself now and go, okay, so what are you really feeling? Don't eat this because you don't even enjoy chicken nuggets. They're nasty.
girl. Yep, 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 yep. That's totally true, And yeah, and we do that and we don't know we're doing it because we just default back to our old ways. And it's easy to default, but it's harder to use that muscle to do something differently. And that's called behavior activation. When you have that initial thought, just go and do it, instead of spending the next 15 minutes why you don't want to do it. Spend those 15 seconds just getting up and just doing it. When you're up, you can't have no choice but to do it at that point.
This is good advice that might get me in the gym. It's like complaining about this dress looks funny. Girl, you know what you can do about that, right?
Right, 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 right. Absolutely. I get it. I get it. I get it. But yeah,
So triple P is positive
parenting parenting program.
positive parenting program.
Hmm.
That is pretty cool. So how did you discover this method? Like, is this something that you learned about in college or something kind of along the way in your therapy practice?
It's interesting. I kind of learned along the way in my therapy practice. So I used to subcontract with the Department of Health. No, excuse me, with the Department of Children's Administration, working with families who had their children removed by CPS. And sometimes in CPS in our area is Child Protective Services. So foster care, sometimes families are having an in-home dependency, meaning that CPS came to the home, they said the place is safe, but we're going to put services in the home to help keep the home safe, basically.
Okay.
Or we work with children that have been placed in foster care, but they're with someone, with a family member called fictive kin. So
Mm-hmm.
grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, maybe neighbor down the street or something like that. So the department had switched from this thing called hands-on parenting, which wasn't an evidence-based program in EBP, and they switched it to the triple P, the positive parenting program, because that's where a lot of, I believe, programs at the time were headed towards. And
Mm-hmm.
so we wanted to make sure that they're having a program that's backed up by science, that people said that it works. So when we go to court to testify on our families, the judges have better information to show why this program works, because it's consistent. It's not based on what I say, is what this book is saying. And it helps a
The
lot of people.
research. Yeah. That makes sense. So there's a whole body of research and different like professionals have come into sort of a consensus about this program working versus, like you
Right.
said, kind of your individual observations. So
Right.
that's awesome that you took like the transition to make sure that people can try and keep their children in their home.
Yes, 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 yes. The program works best when families are more stable. I have had a few instances where families were not, they had a lot of crises. And so it's
Yeah.
really hard if you're always in a crisis. And this program is supposed to be for families that are a little bit more stable. And so sometimes Because I have my therapist hat on sometime. I'm doing both, even though I'm always supposed to be doing one. But because of the situation at the time frame that the state has and the family has, and someone else is trying to get their kids too for whatever, God no reason, God's no
Mhm.
reason. I can't even talk to them, gosh, it's Friday. But anyway, we
Okay.
do have these things that we go through, and try to make sure that we follow the fidelity of the program. We're also being culturally competent because we do work with indigenous populations, Black and Brown people, the Asian communities, and we just want to make sure that we're being appropriate to their cultural, situation, but also be mindful that we still have like a science that we have to use to ensure that we're applying the skills correctly.
Yeah. So, what is something that you learned in terms of cultural competence that like really surprised you?
You know that it really works. It helps. Um,
Mm.
because if we're not culturally competent, we can do a lot of injury to family. If, for example, raised up in a home where you're spanked, right, with a belt or with a switch or with a something,
Yeah.
a kitchen utensil. It can be very challenging because I've had families that I'm in the house cooking and the kids will say, "Oh, I used to be spanked with a spoon that my mom's making spaghetti with." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's kind of injury prone, because now
Yeah.
the thing that I would have on your behind, now I'm over here serving you dinner with it, So there's this dual purpose, and it causes a mild level of distress sometimes. And
Yeah.
so sometimes we got to get it out, remove the product, whatever it is, because you want to ensure that we're using the right thing for the job. Belts are used to hold the pants up, not to spank children, you know.
Yes.
And that there's other ways that we can do that, which is through positive parenting. And a lot of it really is just spending quality time with our kids. If we just, I can't even express like how much change I've had with families when they found out that when they are more present with their kids, not just in the room, but present with their kids, we've had a way better interaction with children because the children felt like the parent was seeing them, like,
Mm.
and not just existing in the same space with them. So, but yeah, I hope that answered your question. I'm so sorry. I can be
No,
tangential.
no, this was insightful because I think that people think about therapy and they think I gotta go sit on this couch and this lady's gonna tell me I'm a horrible person and I gotta get rid of all my belts and or just like I feel like so many people think of therapy as like this judgment space rather than a space where you can come get guidance
Yeah, yeah.
on like
You're
how to create the life and the environment you really want.
right, 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 right. It's interesting because I teach my intensive outpatient for substance use abuse clients at night, and I've had just three people start recently, and they were saying that they were so nervous walking into the room, and they were like, "I didn't know what to expect, and I actually feel way more safer talking about this with y'all than I do with my own friends, and I don't even know y'all." And I'm like,
Wow.
it's about your presence in the space you create with people, because it can definitely be tense and unforgiving feeling, and just really just crowded, even though there might not be a lot of people there. But
Mhm.
it can really create. I mean, the therapist actually sets the tone, and I kind of like to see therapists as a creative facilitator. Because you're really facilitating the process of thought and feelings. You're not passing judgment, shouldn't be passing judgment.
Yes.
But however, keeping the safe, keeping the space safe is really important for a lot of people, because if they had a safe space, they probably wouldn't be talking to us.
That's a really good point. So I think if we could help people understand like that therapy should be a safe space, it might get more people to come. Um, you said you kind of see yourself as like a feelings facilitator. Like, so what does that mean? Like in action, what is it that you're doing specifically to kind of help people be comfortable in your presence?
Yes. So one thing I learned about working with persons when I was working with Children's Administration for CPS involved families, that I had to build rapport quickly.
Ah,
And so you don't Some cases they last for a year. I've had a family that worked on and off for 4 or 5 years,
Mhm.
and then I've also had families that I've only had for a couple of months. But the reality of it is that even though I am there, I'm still assessing for child safety. And so I'm doing that by asking questions, asking the children's questions, asking them what did they eat today. Sometimes I build rapport with children by bringing them food. Kids love McDonald's. And,
Yes.
and I do too. But yes, so we're eating and people commune over food. And so if when appropriate, I bring food. This is way before COVID. But
Yeah.
when appropriate, I bring food and we're talking and we're talking over chicken nuggets and dip and fries and McFlurries or whatever, or sometimes pizza. One time I got one of my preteens, I got her nails done. She had a whole full set. Her nails were longer than mine.
Nice.
4 good sessions. I'll get your nails done. And she gave me 4 good sessions. And then the fifth one, she's getting her nails done and she's quickly clacked all over the place.
Sweet.
But yeah,
That's
so but I build rapport by asking questions and being present with them and then showing them that I have nowhere else to be but here. Even though I have a whole family and stuff and I got traffic because I'm in Ording and Ording in my area is kind of far out there. And I have at least about 40 minutes to get home, but to show them that I have nowhere else to be but here and giving them that safe space and giving them all of me, not touching my phone and looking at my phone, not twirling around in my chair all the time, even though sometimes I get ADHD, I'm like, oh my God. But literally just being present with them. And when they feel like they're being heard, they're gonna open up like a can of worms. It really will.
That's awesome. So you've really learned how to build rapport, and sounds like you've got solid cultural confidence and really touching on like what is important to each person that you work with. So you understood the one young lady really wanted to likes get her nails done. You understand the kids who love the chicken nuggets. Like you really just kind of figure it out. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, so here's actually a question. What advice would you give to somebody who wanted to become a therapist?
Yeah. One thing that I would always tell people is that make sure you do your work because you can really injure people, really do some injury, with people if you're not doing your own work and being painfully honest with yourself. That's like really the first thing. Actually, that's just human services across the board. I don't care if you're being the receptionist, if you're taking the urinalysis for people who have to give things for drug court, whatever it is, you have to do your work because you'll be met with things that you thought you dealt with, and even answering the phone, people in a crisis. The other thing too is there are so many areas to mental health. It's crazy. You know, um, you can work in like a area of chemical dependency because that works with mental health because chemical dependency, the substance is the primary issue for a lot of folks. The secondary thing are the psychological behavioral things that happen, like or physiological things. Oh, I have cirrhosis of the liver, or I'm coughing up more things than I need to right now because I'm smoking a lot.
Yeah.
Or um, oh my gosh, there's so many other things. Or I'm not sleeping well because now I stopped smoking marijuana and now I'm not sleeping as well as I used to. And that's all called post-acute withdrawal syndrome. PAWS, PAWS is the initials, but the acronym, I mean. But yeah, so but anyway, do your work, get a really, really good, what they call the, oh my gosh, clinical supervisor. There we go, a clinical supervisor, because it's really important that you have someone who's going to challenge you and make sure that you're doing the work the way it needs to be done, not letting you cut corners or not letting you really just cut corners when you really boil it down. Because I have worked with therapists in the beginning, even me in the beginning, I was trying to see how can I get better faster. But I
Mhm.
realized in doing that, I'm skipping steps. And then I'm finding out at the end that I missed a few things in the beginning that probably would have enhanced the therapeutic relationship better. Um, and that's me going against my clinical supervisor's wishes, like not like intentionally, but some of but you just do it because you want to be good. For me, I want to be really good. I want to be the best. but
Mhm.
the best takes time, you know.
Hmm.
Takes 9 months to make a baby.
That no, that's a good point. It takes
You know.
time to make the magic happen. It's not overnight.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And to be patient with yourself too, because that's one thing that is really hard that I found because um, there are some, even like right now, my new job, working with veterans and their families. I'm working with people that are really new to therapy, but I feel like they're also way more seasoned than I am,
Yeah.
because they had a really good background from what they're expressing to me. They like some clinical supervisors said that they had not made, but suggested that their people that they're mentoring go to therapy for themselves, or maybe sometimes their programs advise them that they go to 10 sessions of therapy before, well, during their education, because it's important that they work on anything that they haven't worked out yet.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I didn't get that opportunity, because it's kind of funny. I even hate to kind of say this a little bit, but I'm like, by trade, I am a vocation rehabilitation case manager. So
Okay.
basically, for persons who get injured on the job, or they're born with like cerebral palsy, but they want to work or be
Yeah.
gainfully employed, then I will be working with the Department of Developmental Disabilities, or working with LMI claims, or working with the VDA for persons who have been injured and want to get back into the workforce, or being like an employment specialist. And so I switched over to therapy because I felt like that was just a better fit for me.
Uh-huh.
And the Department of Health trusts me. you know. But for the most part, I learned so much over the years, and anyone who wants to be a therapist, I welcome. It is very challenging, especially the first couple of years, particularly for me, on not taking the people's work home and knowing that that's theirs and you leave it there. Now I can go home and talk to my husband about my day and say, oh, yeah, this client, da, da, da. Well, not really this client, but it was a stressful day for me, whatever. And
Yeah.
then move on to the next thing because it doesn't bother me like it used to, because I would come home quiet, and then my husband's like, what's going on with you? Because usually you talk a lot, and I do, as you can tell. Um, and I'm just like, well, today was, and I would tell him all the way from the time I opened my eyeballs to the time that I'm in the door right now, to how I opened the door handle and I didn't like the way it felt in my hand, just pick anything to just
Yeah.
about. But the reality of it is that it does take hard work, and never to work harder than your client. You know, I used to have
Uh-huh.
the full blown flu, and I'm like, "Are you still coming?" I put on eyebrows and everything. If I put on my eyebrows, I'm seeing somebody today. That's all I got to say about that. Judge me if you want to, but if I'm putting on eyebrows, we're having a conversation. But I've had people say things like, "Oh, I'm down the street." How much down the street is there, girl? There's only one light. You know, and I'll be sitting there like a hot fool, literally like a hot fool, sitting there like, why aren't they here yet? They said to be here in 5 minutes. That was an hour and a half ago. Did they go to Costco? What
It don't
happened?
matter. I'll be like, thank you so much for your time. If you have not, somehow magically wound up in the ER or something, we don't have a good excuse. Like,
I even have gotten to the point where I was looking at the jail rosters. Like literally, it was getting bad at one point. And I was like, look, Marla, you're tripping. You need to stop working harder than your clients. So one thing I did, I got two phones. So because what was happening was I'm in church and my clients are blowing up my phone, hoping that I'm like their social worker on the weekend. Like, no, your social worker is whomever.
yes.
You need to connect with them about said problem. I can't help you with this because I'm just your provider. That's all I am.
Yeah.
But I got two phones, even though that was more expensive, but that was the best peace of mind I could ever have, because I turn it off and toss it, literally. Then on Monday, I'm like, oh God, where is it?
Yeah, like let me catch up on the things and
Yeah.
engage people again. But that's good, and it's funny you mentioned that, because what kind of the headspace I'm in right now, like with career conversations. I launched it back in April, and I'm like, do I want to keep doing this at noon on Saturday, like live? And so that I was like, this is my Saturday. Like, this is my like actual day off, like the whole day off, because you get like Sunday blues and like Friday, you're like, checking the box and out. So that's something that I'm in the space of evaluating as well. Like you said, getting two phones. Like I'm like, my work number is now on my, my personal is now on my work cards. It's like those things. Like where are we finding the lines here so that I don't eat, sleep, and breathe work and burn out.
Exactly. And that's the truth that can do it. That burnout is, oh my gosh, it's so crazy real that people don't even understand, the gravity of it,
No, the like when you literally like you open your laptop and then suddenly like subconsciously close that bad boy and walk off.
Yes.
and,
Seriously.
then, and then like 10 minutes later, like, wait, what did I just do? It's 3:30. And it's not Friday.
And it's not right.
Like,
No, I'm telling you, it's definitely it's tough, but always build those healthy boundaries and always be, I don't want to say painfully present because it might feel that way in the beginning when you're working a job like therapy, because sometimes you don't shut off. It took me 3 years to not take my work home with me. So by the time my daughter was like 9 months and struggled with my postpartum, I said either I struggled with my postpartum or postpartum and everyone else's problems. And I had to realize that, Marla, you got to work on your stuff because you can't, if you help yourself, you can't help anybody else. You are no good. And so literally I had to be crazy reflective and painfully present with my kids, with my one daughter now I have three. And they're screaming now. They just got home. I can hear them. But yeah, so yeah, it's a lot, but it's fun. It really is fun.
oh, so three little ones. That's gotta be awesome.
Yeah, it is. You're three girls, and sometimes I'm like, oh my god, what am I getting myself into? But then at the same time, it's like they're so funny and they're weird like me, and they're goofy like
This is a
me.
weird like.
And, like the other night, I was helping my daughter, my 6-year-old, with her homework, and her homework was create a sentence with these spelling words. And so her spelling word was she. And so she said, she is a pig. I said, well, that's a sentence. Moving on to the next one.
It is.
And I didn't even help her with that one. She said, before I blinked, she already had it written down on her paper. And I was like, look, I'm tired. I'm not going to have her erase that.
Like that's your own thought. Great job. You understood the assignment.
Yeah, yep, yeah. And she did. She did wholeheartedly. She did. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to talk more about?
I do want to talk about like the stigma mental health does have, and we talked about it a little bit.
Okay.
And I do want to say that the reason why I'd ask people why how they feel about therapy is because to get their context around it, because it helps me build my own little personal database for ethnicities, gender, everything. Because I've had people, I will say, like now the population of people I'm working with now, a lot of them have already had therapy. Some of them haven't, or in a couple, like one spouse has, the other one didn't, or they are coming together for the first time because they only had a handful of sessions before, but they didn't like the their therapist. Yeah. One thing I will say too about that as well is always advocate for yourself. If you have a therapist that you're not gelling with, bye. It's about you and your recovery. It is not about you, your feelings. I actually had a client. I won't say she fired me yesterday, but she kind of fired me yesterday. Because she felt that I said something. And you know what? I'm like, look, I'm not in her head. I'm not in her life. You know what? That's all right, because this is about you, not about me.
Yeah,
And
because
I'm
you want people to feel like, like, because if people feel like you kind of try to, I guess, you maybe rub them the wrong way, they can't really recover from that space. They're not going to come back and be as open as they need to be for you to really be able to guide them the way you normally would.
right. At first, I was feeling like some type of way about that. And I was like, me? Moi? No. But now I'm just like, it is okay.
No, you're like a billion people on the planet. There's somebody you're not going to jail with. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything negative about you. It's simply, hey, we don't jail.
Right. And the one thing that was really interesting too is that they were really more concerned about how I felt. I'm like, don't be worried about how I felt, because this is about your process. This is not about my feelings, because I don't want to feel like you have to stay with me or anything. This is about you and your recovery. Like, don't, you advocating for yourself. And I applaud them on that. So, yeah.
Which is, I think, something a lot of people don't learn. I was just talking to one of my girlfriends earlier about this, and she was, talking about how her niece gives her a hard time when she gets her terrible gifts, and she was like, as much as it hurts my feelings that she tells me about how much this gift does not please her, I'm glad that she speaks up and feels confident to speak for herself. And I was like, I would love to see a generation of young women that grew up comfortable advocating for themselves. So kudos to you on encouraging your clients to continue doing that for themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, it's hard at first, because the first time I had it, it took me weeks to get over that. She gonna get rid of me? How she, But
Like, the people forget, like, therapists are also human beings. You guys have learned a profession and practice and skill, just like people learn how to be engineers or be excellent teachers. Like, it's a skill, but you don't somehow become superhuman because you have a skill.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. And it's true. Absolutely right. But yeah, but definitely, like, advocate for yourself. Talking to people about their feelings about therapy helps me navigate the waters a little bit, and makes me use a little bit more extra skills with some people, because I'm naturally just weird and goofy anyway, and people kind of just.
So you said you're weird and goofy. You got to explain to me what makes you weird and goofy.
So basically, like, with me, I love sharing, like, my awkward stories that I have as a therapist,
Ah.
And I like to make little jokes and stuff, because sometimes people are crying in session, which is fine. But then I'll say something that I don't really think is that weird, but it sounds a little weird. And then I'm like, oh God. And they start cracking up laughing. And so, it's like, why you did that today? I needed that laugh,
Yeah.
But I sometimes talk about my kids with appropriate, with appropriate disclosure. And share, like, similar situations and stuff, to know that I'm no different than you. I'm no different from you. I'm a people. At the end of the day, I'm a people.
So look, I have the same, fears at night myself, and things that keep me awake, making sure the family's okay. Like, we all have those experiences.
And sometimes I have a weird way of explaining things, but they get it, and they're just like, "You are so weird." Like, I know. So, and they get it, they get it, So I will say that, as of right now, even the one that, kind of let me go, even though I'm still gainfully employed there, I really do like all the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, even the ones that really challenged me, because there are some clients that I know that you can tell they're getting it, and it's almost hard when they get it too fast. I'm like, wait. You're doing really good right now, but let's slow down. I want to make sure that you really get the information, And there's other people that are really evasive and defensive for really good reasons, like I'm not even gonna argue with them. Like, look, I feel it, because if I was you, I would do the same thing,
Yeah, I would be closed off too.
And I feel that, but I just really enjoy the people that I'm working with, and the ones that have kept me on my toes. Even the kids. I have a kid now that keeps me on my toes. And I will say, at the end of the session with children, I'm usually, like, pretty kind of wiped a little bit, Like, whew, that energy was for later tonight with my kids, but it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So, but yeah, but for the most part, I love therapy. I recommend it for everyone, but always make sure you're doing your work consistently. So don't think you're done, always do your work.
That makes sense, to kind of, I went to therapy 3 times in my 20s, and now I'm 50 and I don't need to go again. It's like so many different things happen in life, and you could always use a little help navigating them.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we've talked a little bit about what it takes to be a therapist, how you really need to learn how to listen. You said that in the beginning, like, that's a very, very vital skill. We've talked about some of the education sort of process and the things you've learned along the way, especially about how important it is to be patient with yourself. I don't think I really ever thought about that from the viewpoint of being a therapist and, like, wanting to be the best, but that makes perfect sense. and recognizing it takes time. Marla, thank you so much for being on the show and talking about your experience and really highlighting like what it takes to do what you do, because I don't know that the people understand what it takes to be a therapist or how much work goes into it.
Yes, a lot of work. And thank you for having me. This has been really great. 'Cause I was like, what do I talk about? What do I say? I hope she just gets me. And you just, girl, you're good. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank
thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. If you'll hold for me for a second, I'm gonna, wrap up the show and get other people riled up for next